It's 8 o'clock. This is the UK Tonight. Breaking news as Nicola Sturgeon's husband is charged by police investigating the SNP's finances. Peter Murrell, the party's former chief executive, was taken into custody this morning. We'll have the latest live from Glasgow. Also tonight, an unreserved apology for the man who spent 17 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit. Andrew Malkinson was jailed for rape in 2003, but never stopped protesting his innocence. His conviction finally quashed last summer. I'll speak to the investigator who spent 5 years working to free him. Plus, the Scottish Government ditches its flagship climate change commitment, admitting it's not achievable. Campaigns are calling this decision a reprehensible retreat. And after the controversy over Team GB merchandise for the Olympics, we get our first look at the athletes' kits for Paris 2024. Well, that's come and much more on the UK Tonight. Well, let's start with that breaking news from Scotland this evening, where Nicola Sturgeon's husband has been charged by police investigating the SNP's finances. Peter Murrell, the party's former chief executive, was taken into custody this morning. We can get more now from our Scotland correspondent, Conor Gillis, who's been following this story all day for us and joins us now live in Glasgow. Conor, what details do you have at this stage?
Well, this is serious and this is significant, Sarah-Jane, on a 3-year-long investigation examining the SNP's funding and finances, and confirmation within the last few minutes that the long-time chief executive of the SNP, Peter Murrell, a man who was at the head of the biggest political party here in Scotland for almost 2 decades, and today faced almost 10 hours of further questioning after being rearrested in this investigation, has now been charged. Police Scotland confirming that the 59-year-old has been charged in connection with the embezzlement of funds from the Scottish National Party, and they confirm that he was detained at 9:13 this morning and released from Falkirk Police Station at 6:35 this evening. Now, what is Operation Branchform? Well, it is that 3-year investigation that has been examining the SNP's funding and finances. And behind me here is the home of Nicola Sturgeon and Peter Murrell, the political power couple for so long. And why are we here? Well, it was 1 year ago when this was a hive of police activity as this investigation gathered pace. Clearly now we are very limited in what we can say due to the very legal nature of this. We are anticipating Peter Murrell to return to his home, to return to the property this evening, but it is no doubt a significant moment in this long-running investigation involving the governing party here in Scotland.
Conor, thank you. Conor Gillis keeping across that story for us in Glasgow this evening. More updates throughout the course of the night here on Sky News. Now, the Criminal Cases Review Commission has issued an unreserved apology to a man who spent 17 years in prison for a crime that he did not commit. Andrew Malkinson was convicted of rape in 2003. He never stopped protesting his innocence. But the CCRC refused to refer his case for appeal in 2012 and again in 2020, the same year he was released from prison for good behaviour. When his conviction was finally quashed last summer, the CCRC requested an independent review of his case, which made clear the Commission had failed Mr Malkinson, the CCRC, of course, being the Criminal Cases Review Commission. Well, the chairperson, Helen Pitcher, from the CCRC, said this today. I have written to Mr Malkinson to offer him my sincere regret and an unreserved apology on behalf of the Commission. For me, offering a genuine apology required a clear understanding of the circumstances in which the Commission failed Mr Malkinson. We now have that. Nobody can ever begin to imagine the devastating impact that Mr Malkinson's wrongful conviction has had on his life, and I can only apologise for the additional harm caused to him by our handling of his case. Well, in his response tonight, Mr Malkinson said this: "It's hard for me to see sincerity in an apology after all this time. When you are truly sorry for what you have done, you respond immediately and instinctively. It wells up in you. The CCRC's failings cause me a world of pain. Even the police apologise straight away. It feels like Helen Pitcher is only apologising now because the CCRC has been found out and the last escape hatch has now closed on them. Well, the lead investigator on Andrew Malkinson's legal team, James Burley, joins me now. James Burley working tirelessly for some 5 years to free Mr Malkinson. James, have you spoken to Andrew today?
Yes, I have. And of course, he feels very vindicated by this unconditional apology. But at the same time, he's very disappointed because this should have come a lot sooner. It's too little, too late, frankly.
Explain to us the issue that Mr Malkinson has, and you have, not just on behalf of Andrew Malkinson, but on behalf of others, the issue you have with the Criminal Cases Review Commission and how they handle cases.
Yeah, so the CCRC is the statutory miscarriage of justice watchdog, and really they should have been the safety net in Andy's case, but instead they denied him justice twice. They refused an application in 2012 and then again in 2020. And those rejections were really crushing for Andy. And, you know, those rejections came because the CCRC didn't bother to investigate properly. They didn't commission the DNA testing he asked for, and they didn't uncover the disclosure failures in the case. And really all that work was left to us at Appeal, which is a small organisation. And the real issue here is not just that the CCRC failed Andy, there are many others who will have been failed by the CCRC, because after all it rejects over 97% of cases. And so really what Andy wants to see now is a total overhaul of the CCRC, starting with new leadership.
James, can I ask what it was like to work on this case? You spent 5 years working to witness this moment we're seeing on our screen now, Andrew Malkinson finally getting his freedom. He was out on good behaviour, but this was the conclusion of 17 years of being in prison for a crime he didn't commit. What was it like to work on his case?
Yeah, I mean, it was enormously challenging because we faced huge resistance from the police, but also from the Criminal Cases Review Commission. And, you know, it's fantastic to now see that the world knows the truth. But what's really appalling is how long it's taken to get here. And the fact that only now is Helen Pitcher apologising. You know, she should have apologised last summer when Andy was first exonerated. And instead, the CCRC back then were almost trying to spin it as a success story for them. And, you know, the police apologised straight away. So I don't buy her excuse that she had to wait for this report to come out. You know, it's really that she's had to have this spelled out in black and white for her, and that's just not good enough. And, you know, a real leader, I think, would have apologised a lot sooner.
James, from the experience you have in the work that you do, how typical is this? How many more Andrew Malkinson cases are there?
Many. And, you know, in a weird sense, he's kind of one of the lucky ones because he's managed to get through the CCRC. The vast majority of people don't. And, you know, I don't know if you saw, but the CCRC announced a review earlier this week where they're going to look back over more than 5,000 cases which they previously rejected. So, you know, I'm sure that if that's done properly, that will find other people like Andy who were denied justice by the CCRC. So, yeah, it's not uncommon. Yeah,
you say 5,000. Should they extend the scope of that? Because when you think of what Mr Malkinson case rested on, it was DNA evidence that was there from, I think, 2006. But, of course, the testing wasn't there at that time to make use of it. And that's what you press them on, the fact that, you know, they should be testing this evidence that they had all along. And you just think, how many more cases, more than 5,000, could there be sitting there?
Oh, absolutely, a lot more. I mean, yeah, the CCRC were aware of the fact that there was another man's DNA in an area that the prosecution described as crime-specific. And, you know, it didn't match Andy, and that should have been enough for them to send the case back for appeal. But bizarrely, they said, we're not going to send it back because the ID evidence in the case is so strong. You know, anyone with a brain cell knows that this was not a strong ID case. He didn't match the victim's description. He didn't have the scratch that her attacker would have had. Yeah, you're absolutely right. This goes much further than the CCRC not using new DNA techniques when they became available. It's also to do with the fact that they've been unaccountable and not transparent enough for too long. And because of that, the quality of their decision-making has been really, really poor for a long time. And that needs to be shaken up.
Yeah, you want reform for the CCRC, but appeal that the organisation that you work for and with is now campaigning against a system that essentially relies on police disclosing evidence to criminal defence solicitors who are working against them. This is a real oddity of the legal system, isn't it? Perhaps you can explain the difficulties that, you know, in this case in particular, you had.
Yeah, I mean, it's never really made sense to me that in an adversarial system, you have one side getting to decide what their opponents get to see in terms of the evidence that's disclosed. And with Andy's case, you know, we had to really fight tooth and nail to get hold of documents from the police. We actually had to take them to court twice. So, you know, the odds are really stacked against you if you're on the other side. And we need a system that places less trust in the police, I think.
And for those who do win their appeal and are released, like Mr. Malkinson, what's life like for them after that? Because, again, another oddity that was discovered because of Mr. Malkinson's case was, you know, in any kind of compensation, people could be essentially charged living costs for being in prison for something they didn't do. That was scrapped because it was highlighted because of Mr. Malkinson's case. But, you know, there is that fight for compensation for any other support as well after you've been wrongfully in prison. That end part of the system needs reform as well, doesn't it?
Absolutely. There are many things wrong with the compensation system. Unfortunately, the Justice Secretary, Alex Chalk, has tackled some of those. It's still a lot more that needs to be done, I think. But you're absolutely right. It's a whole nother battle now for Andy to get real justice and to get accountability and to get full answers. And also, I think what's really important to Andy is that he wants his case to have an impact and to help others who are in his same situation as he was. And so that's why he's so keen to see a fresh start for the CCRC and for the body to really get a full overhaul.
James, really good of you to take the time to speak to us here on the UK Tonight. Thank you so much for speaking to us. James Burley there, the investigator who secured the release of Andrew Malkinson after being wrongfully imprisoned for 17 years. We appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, in other news today, the Scottish Government has been accused of making the worst environmental decision in the history of devolution. This is after ditching a key climate change target. The Scottish Government have abandoned their plan to reduce emissions by 75% by 2030, admitting that the goal is simply out of reach. However, they insist they still want to achieve net zero by 2045. So how would that work? Let's speak to Chair of Stop Climate Chaos Scotland. He is Mike Robinson and he joins me now. Really good to see you this evening. Thank you so much for joining us. Why was this scrapped, in your opinion? I mean, obviously, the Scottish Government has said, we're just not going to hit that target, so it's got to go. But was it a lack of will, a lack of money, a lack of public appetite, a mixture of all of the above?
It's undoubtedly a mixture of reasons, but fundamentally, it's only 5 years ago that these targets were actually set by the whole of the Scottish Parliament. But truthfully, there has really not been much action since then. And in a way, it feels as if, you know, we've sort of sounded an emergency alarm. You know, the Scottish Parliament was the first to declare a climate emergency. But then we've just sort of stood there watching the fires build and not really doing anything about it, not even evacuating the building. So it's really a lack of commitment and a lack of actual projects to put themselves behind.
Yeah, I mean, that's backed up by the fact that the Scottish Government missed 8 of the last 12 annual targets. What would that have looked like? What would it have looked like to the Scottish people to be on track to achieve those targets and to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 75% by 2030? What would that have felt and looked like to the people of Scotland?
There'd be more progress in certain areas, particularly around housing, agriculture, transport. And what I mean by progress in those areas, there would be more insulation programmes on homes and more of a push towards different heating systems. In agriculture, we would see there is a discussion at the moment about a change to the subsidy system, which is a natural consequence of Brexit, but there's a real opportunity to steer some of those subsidies to much more climate and nature-friendly practices, and that's something that's been going on for a long time. But the rate of progress in all of these arenas is very slow, and It really needs to find a way to accelerate decision-making, accelerating action.
The final goal of reaching net zero by 2045 will remain, according to ministers. Is that still plausible if they're skipping the 2030 commitment?
It's very debatable, and the problem is we might be having this conversation in another 5 or 10 years' time about 2045 being out of reach. I really hope not, because the UK targets rely on Scotland delivering in 2045, so it's going to affect the whole country. So I really hope that isn't the case. But it does require real commitment, real support. It's going to need some funding, because obviously nobody's got any money for anything at the moment. But I think it also needs leadership. It needs everybody to step up. And I think, to be fair, we've all been distracted for the last 5 years. I mean, it's not been an easy time, and we all know why, with COVID and everything else. But this is really a wake-up call. This is really an urgent reminder that this is not easy. We really need to step up what we're doing. And I think everybody has a role to play and could actually do more. So it's really important that the government take this responsibility seriously. They have to now put in place a programme of how they're going to hit net zero in 2045. And yes, we'll be doing everything we can to encourage them.
Yeah, Mike, I hear you. Climate change doesn't stop for COVID. It doesn't stop for wars. It doesn't stop for a cost of living crisis. You said it yourself there. Nobody's got any money for anything at the moment. What is the public appetite like, do you think, for funding real measures to slow down, to halt climate change? Is the public appetite there, given the fact that nobody's got any money at the moment and there is so much other things that have taken over from the climate change in the list of priorities?
I totally accept that it's a challenge. I do think we're still funding some of the wrong things. And I think ultimately we do manage to find money where the priorities are there. The problem, as you say, is it doesn't stop just because we've got other things on our plate and other things to deal with. And I think some of it is in the way that we tackle the issues in front of us. So with the cost of living crisis, there could have been a really, really strong investment in insulation. And just to sort of lighten the mood slightly, I actually hosted a Greenland Inuit leader some years back. And he told me after a meeting we had in the Parliament that he'd never been so cold in his life as he was walking around Edinburgh. And for a country that rains a lot and it's windy and it can be cold all the time, we really haven't prioritised looking after our own building stock. So we're still wasting a lot of energy and wasting a lot of effort, actually. So a lot of this is actually a call for joined-up thinking. It's not all about having to find new money. Some of it's just using the money.
Well, thank you for ending on a lighter and more positive note. I really appreciate that. Mike Robinson, Chair of Stop Climate Chaos Scotland. Thank you for your time this evening. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
A Conservative MP has denied misusing campaign funds amid calls for a police investigation by Labour. Mark Menzies has been suspended by the Tory party after the Times newspaper published claims that he used political donations to pay off people who had locked him in a flat and demanded money to release him. Our political correspondent Darren McCaffrey has the story.
There was a time when Mark Menzies was a rising star in the Conservatives, but now he finds himself marred again in scandal, under investigation, suspended by the party and removed from his government job. According to The Times, the latest incident dates back to last December, when Menzies woke his elderly former campaign manager at 3:15 a.m, asking for £5,000 as he'd been locked in a flat by what he claimed were bad people. A few hours later, the amount demanded had risen to £6,500, with his current constituency manager Shirley Green using her savings to provide the money. Green was then reimbursed from funds donated by local Conservatives. And yet the following day, Menzies demanded yet another £35,000 for medical bills. It wasn't until January that the Conservative Chief Whip was told and an investigation launched. Only when the allegations were about to become public did Mark Menzies lose the whip and his envoy job. He told The Times, "I strongly dispute the allegations put to me. I fully complied with all the rules for declarations." It's not the first time he's found himself in trouble. In 2014, he resigned from the government over claims he'd paid for sex and drugs. 3 years later, he was questioned by police over bizarre accusations he deliberately got a dog drunk. In both cases, he said, the allegations were malicious and the police never took any action.
He has had the whip withdrawn. Some further information that the Chief Whip, I understand, became familiar with yesterday, and action's been swiftly taken on the basis of that further information.
But Labour are now demanding for the investigation to go further.
There are obviously a lot of unanswered questions in relation to these allegations, not least why it seems the Conservative Party took so long to act and whether they've reported this to the police, who it seems to me should be involved in this.
One of the things that makes Fylde such a special place are the people who live here.
For the people of his usually safe coastal Conservative seat, it's fair to say voters are not happy.
If you were imprisoned by somebody overnight, you'd call the police, wouldn't you? Particularly in his position, I think. I think I would.
It should have gone months ago when it first came out. It's been covered up, hasn't it?
They tell us what to do, and they don't have the same moral inclinations as most other people around here. So he shouldn't be standing at all.
Depending on the investigation, it may in the end not be up to his constituents whether Mark Menzies survives or not. But in the meantime, this is yet another headache for the Prime Minister, and one he frankly can ill afford to have. Darren McCaffrey, Sky News.
Well, this story and the fallout from it is sure to feature in tomorrow's newspapers. We have our extended press preview and news review from 10:30 tonight with tonight's news and tomorrow's headlines. Joining us in the studio, the political journalist Theo Usherwood and political correspondent for Politics Joe, Ava Santina Evans. Still to come here on the UK Tonight. The fight to free people with autism and learning difficulties from detention in hospitals as the government misses a key target. Prince William makes his first public engagement since Catherine revealed her cancer treatment. And back to basics for Team GB as their Olympic kit for Paris is revealed.
I think some of the articles are a little bit misleading. So let's remember what vegan food is, first of all. It's food that's free from meat, dairy, eggs and fish. And a message for all vegans and the entire nation is that what we need to be focusing on is fruit, vegetables, beans, legumes, whole grains. Those are the foods that are going to help prevent disease, feed your good gut bacteria. Our good gut bacteria eat fibre, help us maintain a healthy weight really, really easily without dieting. Those are the foods we really, really need to be focusing on. But sometimes when people hear the word vegan food, they think all of the processed foods, and they can play a part.
This is all vegan food in front of you, isn't
it? This is all vegan food, absolutely.
Would you eat it?
I eat mostly whole foods, mostly plant-based whole foods, and that's what maintains my health, my gut, great energy, and hopefully is going to help prevent disease in my later life. Processed red meat and red meat are classified as type 1 and type 2 carcinogens, so we do need to worry about things like potential disease later in life. There's many other ways of making this sort of food. You can make it with other, they're called substitutes, but really they're just foods in themselves, like tofu and tempeh, which are made from soybeans. You can make your curries without any of this sort of stuff, for example, using chickpeas instead of chicken. That would be the absolute healthier way of doing things. There's a huge, huge range when it comes to plant-based meats. There are some that are made with less ingredients than others. There are some that are cheaper than others. There's some that taste really fantastic. There are some that are just very much soya-based, for example, are a lot healthier. So it really, really depends. But personally, for me, there's other ones other than these that I might eat. But people love these. And like I said, they're great for transition. They're great for the environment, much better than meat. And we still know that these foods don't have the cholesterol in that meat have or the trans fat. They often have less saturated fat. And we know that red meat, even 2 portions a week, can increase our risk of type 2 diabetes.
Now, the government has missed a long-standing target to reduce the number of autistic people or people with learning disabilities who are detained in hospitals. There are more than 2,000 people currently in psychiatric facilities in England, many of them sectioned under the Mental Health Act. Sky News has spoken to the father of a woman detained hundreds of miles from her family who's fighting for her freedom. Sky's Becky Cottrell has this report.
Maeve Lockhead is funny, chatty and thoughtful. She's also autistic and has a learning disability, and she spent long periods in psychiatric hospitals hundreds of miles away from her family and friends in Carlisle.
So this is her on a home visit. She has learnt new behaviours by being in hospital. She talks about herself as being ill. Like if any of us were stuck in a whatever ward for whatever illness for long enough and doctors kept treating you as if you were, then you start to believe that you are.
Maeve was sectioned under the Mental Health Act, but Adrian says she's not mentally ill, but remains there because the local care authorities can't find somewhere appropriate for her to live.
It's a deep worry that keeps you awake at night about what is going to happen when I can't try and find some solution for her. And I've spent 10 years trying to get a solution for her, and we are no closer today than we were at the start.
There are currently 2,045 people with autism or learning disabilities in psychiatric facilities in England. The average time people stay in hospital is nearly 5 years, costing £1.2 million per individual. And the main reason for delays to hospitals discharging people is a lack of suitable housing. Back in 2019, the government committed to halving the number of inpatients with autism and learning disabilities by now. Not only have they failed to achieve that, charities estimate it could take another 6 years at least. Sky News has previously covered the scandal of people being detained in hospital alone and separated from family.
Nice and sunny.
Derek Blenkinsop was in and out of a psychiatric hospital for years. He has a learning disability, but he's now in his own purpose-built bungalow, supported by carers.
I feel living here.
Why is that?
Because I've got confidence with the staff.
He spends his days doing the things he loves.
I sit and colour in. I listen to music. I see the family when I can.
And do you feel like you've got privacy as well?
Yeah.
Derek has very different needs to Maeve, but his experience shows there is a better alternative. The NHS organisation responsible for Maeve's care said they're committed to helping people live independently in their own home or community, and that they work with individuals and their families to tailor support packages to their needs, as close to family and friends as possible, and they're committed to reducing long-term hospital care.
Huh?
But while some are thriving with the right support, others are fighting for their freedom. Becky Cottrell, Sky News, Carlisle.
And Becky joins us now in the studio. Becky, their families know they shouldn't be in the hospital. The government knows that they shouldn't be in these hospitals. So why are they still there? Why this delay?
It's kind of maddening because it's obviously not a cost-saving thing. You know, you speak to Adrian, Maeve's dad, clearly a smart guy who understands his daughter's needs. And he says whenever he says to the council, why don't we try this so she can be at home with support? Why don't we try that so she could be in a home with another couple of people? It all just falls through. Now, the council would say, well, each individual circumstance is incredibly complicated and we need to get it right. But Adrian is frustrated, not at individuals, but what he sees as a lack of a willingness within the system to change things and a lack of a joined-up approach between the NHS and the local authority. And we know without a big push from government and from councils to change this, this problem is not going to get fixed. And, you know, we've got a general election on the horizon. Councils are dealing with budget crises. Doesn't feel like much is going to be done anytime soon.
And that's just one family. They've been going through this for 10 years. There are thousands of other families going through the same thing. What is the effect on the individual in that hospital when they don't need to be for such a long period of time, and the effect on the family as well?
Well, it depends. I mean, in the case of Derek, who was in that report, his carer said when he went in to sort of do the transition to get him into his bungalow, he was just kind of void of emotion. There was no kind of personality coming through, and he's had a real turnaround since he's been out there. I mean, in the case of Maeve, her dad was saying to me, she's sort of become institutionalised. She's completely aware of everything that's going on, but she sort of feels like she's ill. She's picking up behaviours from the people she sees. You know, the other people in these facilities are people that are experiencing psychosis. this, people that have got severe drug addictions. It's not a place that Maeve should be. I've spoken to her on a couple of occasions. She's really cool. She's got so much going for her. And she said to me she wanted her story to be told, not just to try and change her own circumstances, but to try and help other people in equally tragic circumstances.
Yeah, to highlight what's going on. OK, where does it go from here, Becky?
Well, we're going to have to wait and see what the government do. I mean, charities want them to reaffirm their pledge to try and reduce the numbers, but they've been changing the goalposts and extending the targets. It kind of needs more than that. It needs money. It needs a change of approach.
And in a general election year, you do wonder how much is going to move. OK, Becky, thank you. I know you'll continue to follow that for us here on Sky News and get updates for us on the UK Tonight. Thank you. Now, Prince William, he has received a lot of get-well-soon cards to pass on to the Princess of Wales. This was on his first public engagement since the Princess of Wales revealed that she is being treated for cancer. Well, the Prince visited a food distribution charity in Surrey, and while meeting volunteers, he appeared quite touched as he was given those cards and messages of support for his wife.
Lots of cards, are you very kind? It's very kind. You've got some spaghetti. You've got children, I don't spaghetti.
Still to come here on the UK Tonight. We'll take a look at how to use bleed kits. This is as part of a campaign to tackle rising knife crime in the UK. Welcome back to the UK Tonight. It is the London Marathon on Sunday, of course, one of the premier road races in the world, but also one of the UK's biggest fundraising events. Last year, £63 million was raised for good causes, a figure that's likely to be surpassed by the thousands of runners taking part this weekend. Well, I'm pleased to say one of them who is running on Sunday is knife crime campaigner Laura Hughes. She is taking part. She set up the No Knife Crime group following the death of her brother Colin, and she raises money to buy bleed kits to be placed in the areas that need the most, all in her brother's memory. Well, Laura joins us live now from Liverpool, alongside A&E doctor Nicole Russell, who is the education lead for the bleed kit charity Knife Savers. Ladies, good of you to join us on the UK Tonight. First of all, Laura, Sunday, big day for you. Talk to me about the charity and why you want to raise money on Sunday for it.
So our campaign, No Knife Crime, is a youth anti-knife crime campaign that does work all across the country. We've got quite a strong foothold in the Northwest, and we do this in memory of Colin McGinty, who was my brother, who sadly died at the age of 21 in the year 2001 as a victim of knife crime and a terrible case of mistaken identity. And we fundraise in Colin's memory to be able to purchase and donate vital life-saving equipment, which is in the form of the Knife Savers kits.
Yeah, talk to us about the Knife Savers kits, otherwise known as bleed kits. I've got one with me in the studio here. Just have a look at it. They're quite small. This is the Knife Savers kit here, bleeding control kit. Perhaps you can tell us a bit about why these are so important, Laura.
So I feel that these are so incredibly important because when I started doing a lot of campaign work, I was watching what the Knife Savers team were doing, and I was blown away by the impact that they were having and by the fact that they're all medical staff that are behind Knife Savers as a brand. So it was founded by one of the lead trauma surgeons in Merseyside. And when I explored what they do as a organisation, as a company, and what the whole purpose of a bleed control kit is, it's quite simple. Items within that kit will stop a person from losing too much blood because it can take about 7 minutes for an ambulance to arrive at an emergency scene, but it can take a person on average 5 minutes to lose enough blood for their heart to stop. So we see that victims of knife crime are getting younger, the story's getting much more tragic, and actually the deaths could potentially be avoided. So for me, as a campaigner, but also as a mum of a teenager, I feel like that's imperative to have these across the community.
Well, I'm going to bring in Nicole here to talk us through what's in the kit, because as she said, it's really simple, it's really small. You want them in key locations in towns and cities. I'm just going to start unpacking it. They're usefully labelled 1 to 3, the 3 steps that could potentially save a life. So, Nicole, over to you. I'm taking out the gauze strip first. Now, I was under the impression that you would have to, if you found someone who'd been stabbed, you'd have to apply pressure to the wound. But the bit of gauze here is for actually packing the wound, which many people won't realise. So talk us through it.
Yeah, so absolutely. The first steps would always be to get help available, to be able to be alert to what's going on around you, and then finding that bleeding point and putting pressure on that wound. But if that isn't enough and you do have a pack with you, then you've got some extra kit available. So the first thing that's in your hand there was the Celox gauze. That's a hemostatic dressing. That will go into the wound. What can look small on the outside can be quite deep on the inside. And that hemostatic dressing will encourage clotting at the base of that wound. You can see in that video there how that goes directly into that wound to pack that wound and encourage your body's clotting factor to really kick into action to help to create a clot.
Yeah, so it's packing the wound, isn't it? The second step is the bandage.
Yeah.
And then after that, if somebody's been stabbed in the arm or leg, there's a tourniquet as well. So it's literally the 3 steps. It's the packing with the gauze, the bandage, and then the tourniquet if needed.
Absolutely. It's very simple. 1, 2, 3. The trauma bandage will apply pressure, and the tourniquet adds that extra level on an arm or a leg. But again, just reiterating that pressure alone, even if you don't have that pack, one hand over each other at the other and putting that pressure on is enough to control majority of any major bleeding.
How much do these kits cost, Nicole?
So the kits are provided by a local supplier, Cade Medical, and they are coming at £50. But it's not just about the kits, it's about the whole education around those kits. So we want this message to be as common knowledge as CPR, as the stroke signs in every single household. Big events like Sefton yesterday, we had 80 schools involved, all of whom have gone away and been able to talk to their friends, their relatives about exactly how to control the bleeding. And that is the most important part of this campaign, is that education.
Yeah, as you said, to be as well known as CPR. And Laura, what locations do you want to see bleed kits in? Because so many people will think, oh, this wouldn't happen on my street, this wouldn't happen in my town or village. But whenever we speak to people here on Sky News whose families have been affected by knife crime, they said exactly that before it did happen to them.
And I would completely back that up. I don't think knife crime discriminates from a postcode perspective, regardless of where you live. It can happen. So where we've got these kits in cabinets at the moment, outside schools, in public places, but the country's massive. We want to have these kits in cabinets, like the defib concept, in every public space where young people socialise, not just young people, everyone in general. So wherever you would see a defib cabinet as standard, we would want you to see a bleed control kit in a cabinet.
And I'm just going to show the pack again because they're quite distinctive, aren't they? I mean, we all know what a defibrillator looks like, bright yellow. You see them outside village halls and supermarkets and things like that. You want this to be just as common a sight. And Laura, the education is such a big part for you as well after what happened to Colin. What do you say when you speak to young children about knife crime?
The whole angle in our assembly that I tend to do with young children is all around just being aware who your friendship circle is, being aware of the consequences of knife crime. So our campaign means two things. It means know about the consequences of knife crime, be educated around it, but also no, don't get involved in it. Stay away from it at all costs. And I talk a lot about like joint enterprise, about, you know, simply just be aware of who you're socialising with, be aware of the vulnerability that you can put yourself in situations of. And then I talk quite a bit about Colin and what happened to Colin and the consequences to the people that killed Colin. And then we talk about what we campaign for and how they can get involved. So we don't tend to look backwards on what happened. We look forward and we try and get all these young people to become no knife crime youth ambassadors, which they are, and we empower them with ways in which they can get involved with the campaign and make their community safer.
Well, Laura, you're running for a fantastic cause on Sunday. How are the legs?
They're all right. They could be better. Ask me on Monday.
Oh, the adrenaline will get you through on Sunday. And thoughts of Colin as well. He'll be driving you onto that finish line. Best of luck. I hope you raise lots of money. And Nicole, a final word from you. If people want to see that video again or find out more information about bleed kits and what to do in an emergency, where should they head?
Come visit us at our website, knifesavers.co.uk, and download the app, which will give you those exact steps of what to do with and without a bleeding control kit, all evidence-based.
Nicole Russell, A&E doctor, and Laura, thank you so much. And Laura, best of luck.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, ladies. Thank you.
Good night.
And we're going to stay with sport. It's less than 100 days to the Olympics in Paris. And Team GB's preparation hit another milestone today with the launch of the athletes' official kit. And after the row over the new colour scheme for the Union flag on sale to the public, the designers of the team's uniform have steered clear of any such controversy. From Paris, our sports correspondent Rob Harris has the big reveal.
The big reveal. In Paris, unveiling Olympic and Paralympic kits. This, the look for Team GB. Back to basics. Classic red, white and blue. Style simplicity from Adidas.
I've been in the process of getting ready for Paris for years, and then all of a sudden it becomes real and it's all coming to life. So yeah, it's very exciting to get in the kit, and it just makes me feel very proud and think I really want to make sure that I get here.
This a traditional look to Team GB at a time when variations on flag designs by sports teams has stoked heated debates. Team GB hope this kit will put the traditionalist minds at rest with a very patriotic design and no tinkering at all with the Union Jack. There it is in red, white and blue. For athletes, it's the technical specifications that matter most to maximise performance.
I was actually consulted in the design process for the Paralympic side of things as well, and we thought about access features, and the team sort of really focused on sort of not just the sort of performance side of it, but also the functionality and the access side of it as well.
The specific needs of female athletes now a focus for designers.
I think as an athlete you want to feel at your best when you're out there competing, so you want to feel confident and, you know, comfortable in your kit.
Sometimes athletes feeling kits might be too skimpy.
Yeah, I think every athlete is completely different. I think it's about having, you know, a broad response from, you know, a large section of athletes to understand, well, how do we make the kit more appropriate for you and how do you feel more confident in the kit that you wear? And I think the key thing is putting the athletes at the heart of that.
Athletes know how they'll look at the Games, now just needing to secure places to compete in the summer. To deliver the 66 Olympic medals Team GB is projected to win. Rob Harris, Sky News, Paris.
As does come on the programme, the expedition charity on the hunt for 10 underprivileged teenagers to take to the Galapagos. Details on the way. And anger among clubs in the lower leagues after a significant change to next season's FA Cup with no more replays. We're going to talk about that next.
Big stories don't always come from big cities. I'm Lisa Dowd and I'm Sky's Midlands correspondent, and this is where I grew up. We can reveal that the driver who hit Harry Dunn is 42-year-old Anne Sakulas.
Just met the president and we never thought we'd get this far.
This is what they're up against, that the wind is the really big problem. It is back-breaking work and the smoke is thick. It's been working well. Water levels are dropping, but no one knows what impact further rain will have. What would you do if this place wasn't open? We take you to the heart of the stories that shape our world.
It's really scary. We're terrified.
In this community, I'm told that everybody knows someone affected by COVID.
Hopefully this will be the last wave.
I never knew they would make it. It's amazing.
Change seems tantalisingly close in this corner of the UK. Wales was the first to introduce the plastic bag charge. This is my patch, my specialism. It's also my home.
I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
Hello, welcome back. Coming up, the lucky teenagers who could be following in the footsteps of Charles Darwin. But first, David Garrido is here with the sport. And has the FA Cup lost a little bit of romance because there's been an announcement today, a lot of criticism around it. No replays from the first round.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, listen, this is significant. It's part of a new 6-year agreement between the FA and the Premier League. Currently, no replays from the 5th round. This is for the full competition proper. There are sort of replays in the preliminary rounds and qualifiers. The FA said they've made this move in light of changes to the calendar driven by the expanded UEFA competition. So this is to do with European football's governing body expanding the Champions League from 32 teams to 36 teams. Each team will have minimum sort of 9 games versus 6 games at the moment. And on top of that, the Premier League have also removed its mid-season break. And as a result of that, basically, there's not as much space to accommodate the fixtures. So what they've done is they've lost the FA Cup replays throughout the competition proper.
Other football forcing it out. But it's worth, you know, explaining why replays are so important to the smaller teams.
Yeah, I mean, understandably, this comes down to money, as most things do. But for that sort of plucky non-league team that gets through to
the underdog.
Yeah, you know, the Havant or Waterlooville or the Kidderminster Harriers, when they've been like the non-leagues way down the football period and they fight their way through to the 3rd round. The reason they're so excited is because that's when the Premier League teams come into the competition. They have their chance to get that big lucrative tie that is shown on TV and they get that money. Now, of course, if you have replays, there's more chance you might get that tie where you go to that other team like Old Trafford. You sometimes get a share of the gate receipts as well. And the money is significant because it could get them out of financial troubles or it could even secure their future for months or even years. But for the Premier League teams, that amount of money is nowhere near as attractive, and they'd rather keep the calendar clear for the proper big money spinners, which is, you know, the games in Europe. As you mentioned, I mean, a lot of the reaction to this has been quite negative. Perhaps the most damning comes from the Tranmere Rovers vice chair, Nicola Palios, who said 729 teams compete in the FA Cup. Why is its format being dictated by the Premier League, who represents circa 3% of them? Protest is needed.
Good point.
So, yeah,
Good point.
so that's
well
the kind of
made.
a sense of the reaction there. So, yeah, that's the main story as far as football is concerned, but lots of European action to keep up to date with as well.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality. Getting more people more active. Live life with Vitality.
This is a glimpse into the future of AFC Bournemouth, a multi-million-pound training ground that is getting closer to transforming the club completely. Owner and American businessman Bill Foley was visiting from his home in Las Vegas, an opportunity to see his vision becoming reality.
It looks spectacular.
It looks spectacular, but maybe
that's the difference you've got.
Could we have saved a few £1 million?
Maybe. But yeah, it certainly looks incredible, that's for sure.
I mean, women's academy, first team, unbelievable facilities are going to be here. This will be one of the best training facilities in the league. When it's finished, it's going to be unbelievable.
Despite being Bournemouth's owner for less than 18 months, he's been bullish with his predictions about survival and made huge strides off the pitch in an industry that promises fans so much but fails to deliver. So how has he kept his word?
Transparency, be honest, always tell the truth, and really always be honest. And I have big ambitions for this team. And I know we can do it because I've done it. I've done it with
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality.
Now, we always like to leave you with something weird or wonderful here on the UK Tonight. And an Explorer charity are on the hunt to find 10 underprivileged teenagers to follow in Charles Darwin's footsteps and head to the Galapagos. The We Too Foundation are asking for nominations for young people who are from disadvantaged backgrounds across the UK to take part in this once-in-a-lifetime experience. The trip will see the group undertake wildlife surveys, collect ocean plastics and work with conservationists, as well as taking part in environmental initiatives on the islands. Well, explorer and co-founder of the We Too Foundation, Dwayne Fields, joins me now. Dwayne, what an opportunity this is for young people. Tell me more, why did you want to do this?
Well, it's exactly what you said, Sarah. It's an opportunity for young people who, just like myself and my co-founder, Phoebe Smith, we didn't have opportunities like this growing up, and we thought that we've had a good run of things. We've been fortunate enough to be able to travel the world, see what's out there, see how we impact the world and how it impacts us. And now we think one of the ways that we can help change the cultures that we're seeing developing, especially in our urban areas, is by inviting more young people into these natural spaces. You heard a minute ago from Laura And my heart goes out to her, and I'll be cheering her on from the sidelines when she takes to the road and runs the London Marathon. But things like that, we hope that we can steer young people away from that by steering them towards the outdoors as a natural space that they can go explore and learn in.
Yeah, and showing them what is possible, because this isn't just a trip of a lifetime. It's not a jolly. Like you said, they'll be working when they're on that trip. They'll be working and learning. So it's not just a trip, it's the start of a journey, you hope, for these young people. The idea being that they pay it forward. And you've already done an expedition with some young people to Antarctica. This is your second expedition. What did they take from the experience? What have they done since?
Well, the great thing about the trip to Antarctica is it does exactly what we hope to achieve, which is introduce young people to places they didn't think that they belonged, or places they didn't think they'd ever get to. And even if they could imagine getting there, they didn't have the resources or the connections to make it. The fallout from Antarctica is that we've had young people who've now changed the courses that they've done that they've gone on to do at university. We've got young people who've managed to get work placements, paid internships as a result of conversations they had on that expedition, and as a result of the learnings, the things they've taken away. I myself, I've had maybe 3 or 4 people, young people, asking for references, and I know Phoebe has too, just and solely because of that trip. I know also that they've used that trip and the experiences that they've had to go on to answer those really difficult questions that you get when you go into an interview, like, tell me a time when you worked as part of a team. Tell me a time when you overcame something that was a cause of anxiety to you. So I know that trips like this one, especially the one to Antarctica, had a huge impact on so many young people. And we keep in touch with them to this day. And I know they go around, they visit schools, talking to other young people and steering them clear of the troubles that's out there on the streets.
Dwayne, that isn't a fallout, that is a massive pick up. It goes through nominations, so people nominate young people they think would benefit from this, that need this. How do people get in touch? What's the process?
Easiest thing in the world. It's a 6-question form. If you go to teamwe2.com, you can fill out an application form or a nomination form on there. And I'd encourage every single person. Last time around, we had about 700 nominations. It was the most difficult thing for me and Phoebe to whittle that down to 10. This time around, we want it to be 10 times as many. So every single person watching this show either knows someone who's between the age of 16 and 19 or knows somebody who knows somebody. So I'd say reach out to all the people in your networks, get them to go onto the website, check out exactly what we stand for, exactly what we're going to be doing on the trip, and nominate as many young people as you can.
Dwayne, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us. Dwayne Fields, good luck with it all. Let us know how you get on. Yalda's next, live from Jerusalem. We'll see you tomorrow.